Fairies and mice. Very common in literature. Very cute. I think it's a very charming and appealing uh, piece. I'm assuming watercolor, but
Sure looks like it. Christine, you
uh,
might correct us if we're wrong, but
very cute. I think, it's got that nice watercolor look and feel to it, which I think bodes very well for anything involving fairies, which are very lightweight, lightweight
ethereal.
characters. Yeah,
Yeah.
very ethereal. My notes pertain to just staging here. I think the mouse character works really well if he's just with this one pink girl. Um, I'm assuming he's linked arms with this gal too, but the arm is blocked or covered by the position of him. So maybe, slightly positioning this fairy a little bit more to the right where you could see his arm linking up with hers. And then you could get a nice circular flow going more so with the illustration that I think she's aiming for. Um, but very nice. I like that she's kept the little mouse character looking like a real rodent, not too cartoony. I think it suits the overall look and feel very nicely. Oh, this is very cool.
Laura's piece.
Very interesting. This has a very fine art feel to it with the use of implied outline with this really impasto three-dimensional kind of
Yes.
texture going on. Very cool. I like the contrast of it. It's a harsh contrast, but I think it works really well with the use of watercolor and the washes. And, it's kind of not messy. I don't think messy is the word, but it's got a real what's the word? It's got a nice, very active feel to it, and I think it probably relates to what might be coming for this poor little dragonfly, judging by the little what I'm assuming is a frog popping out here. There's an energy overall of the piece. I think it's probably a probable impending doom.
That's the mood, huh?
Getting that. It's got a very striking feel to it, though. I mean, it stands out to me very much so. Very very unique use of textures here. My concern would be if it is for children's book illustration, where's the way to implement text, and so without ruining the overall look and feel of it. That's
Uh,
kind of why I initially felt like this had a fine art feel to it. My concern
uh,
is clarity. When you're thinking for a children's book, the outlining I would maybe consider simplifying a little bit, or at least, these open blue patches in the back, maybe cleaning up some of the black, paintwork there and just leaving it more so for outlining characters and environmental elements, just to help with the clarity of the piece. That and just maybe be mindful again if it's for illustration or children's books, where your text might go. Maybe it's just a matter of removing this bottom corner portion here and keeping it just a watercolor wash, which a text would work really nicely with, I think.
hmm,
Very interesting piece. Oh, here we go.
a lino cut with watercolor. Okay.
Oh, very interesting. Good job, Laura.
Yeah, Laura.
Ooh,
This is
llama.
Leslie. Yes.
Okay, so I'm assuming obviously it's nighttime. First off, I'll say I really like the use of kind of overlapping textures and mediums here. I like the implied canvas texture going on here with the overlap of the what looks like cutout, almost spray painted paper. There's this nice little erratic spats that you would get from a spray can. Um, I like the use of dark versus light. I think she's done a good job of helping this main character and the archway here stand out against the background. Nice use of contrast. My concern is this foreground character. I'm assuming it's coming from the foreground. He's
Mhm.
of the same dark values as the character here with the archway. So if
Mm.
we really, you want always your darkest elements to be, or your most foreground elements will come off the darkest, because again, you're thinking of it like a camera in a way. it's going to be the closest to the viewer. So to get that atmospheric approach, you want to always have it getting lighter and lighter and lighter the further back you go, day or night scenes. But maybe she could remedy that by having some really strong highlights from that light source on the bottom parts of the creature character here. And that I think would add even more drama and spookiness, to the overall piece. Lighting always makes a heck of a difference, especially if it's implied lighting. It's not overt, like just showing every detail. Something you see in movies, like with the Godzilla movies. They don't show all of the character. They show the silhouette of the character. They show, a quick flash of it being, with lightning or something. Things to get the reader's mind thinking more about the character than really knowing and expecting what it looks like. There's so much more to a piece when you can imply a narrative versus, giving it all away. So there's I think great potential for pushing the drama and the spooky factor here a little bit more, but a great start.
Great.
Oh, very cute. I see a very Frog and Toad inspired piece here. Really cute. Really nice use of color throughout. I mean, I think some people might have issue with the saturation of the blue here, but I think it works. It's consistent throughout. I think overall, in terms of a page layout, there's more room, I think, to consider adding more environmental elements to help fill the space, or maybe it's a matter of, scaling up the piece as a whole. Again, it depends on where we are in the story. If this is kind of the beginning, you may either want to keep it as a landscape kind of piece where you get to show the reader, introduce them to the world that the story is going to take place in. So if that's the case, keep it wide and show just more environment. If you're past that point and you're focusing more on the characters and not so much their environment, I would say definitely zoom in a bit more to make that focus and focal point be on them and their little clothing features, which are really cute. But nice use of color, and I love the textural feel that's going on here too. Very nice.
So the characters are really coming along too. They look like you've developed them a little more. Now they're so readable and they feel like real people.
Yeah, their silhouettes, everything that they're doing is really readable. Again, their positioning's great. I personally like 3/4 poses.
Yeah.
I think they're really great. They're better sometimes than a full frontal, which, sometimes is just a little too simple. It works for toddler stuff, but 3/4 poses are always great. And again, the action is very readable. So good work. Oh, this is fun. It's like a chimera where you've got the multi-animal hybrid creature going on. Very interesting. I really think, there's a nice sense of focus going on. I think as interesting as the background is with the implied water texture, I think, and the reflectiveness of the water, which I'm assuming is the nice little white highlight circles here, the character itself stands out really well against it. I'm very interested to know what this is all about. It's working. This also, I like too that there's some space here. This works really well for your text layout. If you were to put text right here, great spot for it because you don't have anything really dark to distract from what I would use is probably a black text or a really dark green. So really overall well thought out piece and use of staging here.
Oh, Nick, I'm sorry. It's part of a double page spread, and its companion side is on the right, and there it is. So it's hard to figure out how to show that sometimes.
Gotcha.
But so
okay,
I think it's more of what you've been saying, only double.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Now that I'm putting 2 and 2 together here, literally, this is the same kind of look and feel that this piece, the end of this piece had. So if it's connecting here, it's got great continuity. And again, I think you have a bigger space to put your text. it feels very much like that was the intention, just because that's really the only area where the artist did not put these darker spots of color, again indicating, I'm assuming, the water, the depth of the water.
Yeah.
Very, very unique approach to that. I really, really like that. Water is one of the really, really trickiest things to create and reproduce
Yeah.
in really any medium. I mean, it's one of those things artists labor over and, often screw up all the time. And I really think this is a very cool, very shapely, unique approach to it that I think captures the look and feel of water really, really well. And again, the use of the medium is really consistent throughout. Very nice work. Yeah, great work, man. My only suggestion would be is maybe, this green of the grass here, which I would say should be more of a foreground element, is it's actually a little lighter and a tad more saturated than the green used in the water effect. I would say, maybe just darkening that a little bit more so it feels a little bit more distant from the water. You don't have that issue with the bird because the bird doesn't have a lot going around it with that dark green. It stands out nicely as a foreground element. So yeah, maybe just darkening that guy a little bit more here. But great work. This is fun.
Yeah, this is Mandy's second piece, so you can leave it with a comment. But okay. I am noticing the
very, very clever. I think kids would like it because it's got a real strange. How many characters do you see with 10 feet? It's a fun pun. I really like that. Play there. My suggestion would just be maybe considering to lighten the suit because you're kind of losing, where the top meets the bottom and the details of the lapel here. Just maybe lightening that a little bit. But very interesting piece.
And that's another of Mandy's pieces. So that's her cover for her little book proposal. And but
very cool.
Yeah,
very engaging. I think it's got it definitely lures you into that nice central focal point here. My only concern would just be text layout. You've got a lot of negative space here, so maybe just either scooting or blowing up the whole image and having your text over here on the left, or maybe scaling it down a bit and going from there. I don't know.
Again, could she just turn her image in, excuse me, and let the designer worry about?
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Putting the text in, is that a possibility? Do we need to even worry about putting text on the covers we submit with our dummy proposals? Don't you think what do you say to that, or does it help?
I think for we do it with all our books. I think it's always a good thing to have, just because it's your baby from start to finish. And if you've got, you're doing it cover to cover, so I think it's always great to, imply what you want, even if you don't get a final say in the end, just to at least give them the idea of what you're looking for with text layout. Very cute. I mean, there's some fun interactions going on, a nice contrast of what's going on. I had a little peek at this earlier on, so I think what I would just say overall is, like I said, there's some great character interactions going on and poses. I would scale them up a bit more because there's so much, negative space around all the characters. I would consider doing that. Also, the characters they're drawn very well, very solidly done, and the outlining is really crisp, and they're painted solidly. Not too much variation in light and shadow. They're not overly rendered. And as a style, that works fine. But I think it's at odds with the background a bit, which has a lot of texture and varying elements of texture. Like this ground here has some sandy-like speckled texture to it, whereas the background has more of a blurred, kind of fuzzy brush kind of texture. So I just think, maybe flattening it out so it's consistent with the character style, I think would really tie the whole thing all together a bit more. And make sure the color of the ground, the background green could probably work, but the bottom floor color here, I would saturate a bit more, just because it feels a little on the gray side. But overall, really fun. I love this guy. Great pose that I think any kid who's ever felt nervous in their life.
When you say saturate the gray, what can you clarify a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I would say maybe, just warming it up a bit. It's a
Putting
little
some
cool.
colors, putting some hue in
Yeah,
there.
yeah. Add a hue of color.
Make it warmer.
Maybe even add some, textured elements of, or not, excuse me, texture, bad choice of words, but some like pattern elements in the floor. Maybe they're on like a big mat of sorts, something to help,
Okay.
break up this big square of gray. And like I said, if you enlarge the characters too, you'll utilize the space that much more, and your focus will be on what's going on there, which is really great work there. But I think they will only be heightened by enlarging them and just making that background work more cohesively with them with a flatter paint approach.
Great. Good thought. Mariama is in Ghana right now. She's probably
Oh,
not
wow.
watching tonight because she's in a different time zone. But
Is she a method illustrator? She went to Ghana to do an African dance page. That's pretty amazing.
working on
Like
several
method
stories there while she's out that way. She's actually American, but she's
wow.
ensconced in Ghana right now.
This
Pascal.
is for
Yeah, this was the Tommy DePaul. We have a couple Red Riding Hoods tonight.
wow.
Now Pascal has got a couple in, but I think you can
Okay.
look at them both pretty
I think I saw
quickly.
some of let me just glance through these. Okay, so that's not his. I think this is.
Just those two, I believe.
Okay. I'll talk more about this one. I think overall this one is stronger in that the overall composition is really, really well done. There's the stylistic approach is really consistent. Um, everything has its element of stylization to it. The trees here with the leaves not connecting. It's got kind of a almost Mary Blair style to it. Very, very cool. Overall, a very nice, consistent piece. My only and it's not really a criticism. I just question some of the texture used on some of the elements here. I wouldn't, of course, use it on everything because I think that would just be visually quite distracting. But I don't know if I would use it on this background tree. It's almost like the same texture you see on this wolf. It's interesting. I can't put my finger quite on it, but overall, the look and feel is really charming, really cohesive, and the overall composition, I love a composition where there's not a big void where your eye will go. And I think definitely that's not the case here. Everything has a place. There's no now. That might be an issue in terms of adding text because there's not a spot for it right now. But as a illustration right now, it's a very nice solid piece and good use of dark elements here for the
Yes.
foreground to really help bring you in, to guide you into the piece.
Yes. It's immersive in that way, isn't it? And I like the fact that it looks like a little stage set too, with little flats and layers
and
in it.
A nice little indication of shadow, so it really does feel like you're on a stage
with
That's
lights above it. And her attire is so fresh and original. I mean, have we ever seen Little Red Riding Hood like her? She 1930s with the Ked sneakers. I mean, it's so adorable.
It's really funny. I mean, you could, if it was a present day one, you would almost like, maybe it's a little girl who was playing in grandma's trunk and she found all her old clothes from, the bygone era. The modern, she went on this imaginative journey because the look and feel is very imaginative. It's not like an overly illustrated, you feel like you're in the woods. You're in a different woods. You're in a different world. So I think it really lends itself to that very nicely. Really fun
fresh.
piece.
Yeah, really fun and fresh.
A nice portfolio piece. And this is the other piece by the same artist?
This is Pascal's other piece, yeah.
I'll keep it short, but overall, nice color palette, very consistently done. Great work, great space here for text. Really, my only note would be the little action lines coming from the leaves here. They all seem to be going to the cat's hand, as if I'm assuming maybe the cat has thrown them. I would maybe, space out those dashed lines a little bit because they almost look like if you squint in your eye, or if this is viewed in a smaller screen, it looks like it's a string that the cat is whipping around or something. So maybe keeping the dashes separated and having those lines of action come from maybe more in generic, like from the pile of leaves. Maybe the cat has burst through the pile. More of that, I think, would just make the action read a little bit better. And maybe having a few more leaves too. But very nice piece, very consistent. This is very cute. I would suggest the dog here, I like the overall texture going on. I think that it's a little funny because the dog doesn't have too much going on. And I know that might be because it's white on a white paper texture, perhaps. But I'm also noticing like the collar and the little brassy part of the collar, they look like they were probably painted digitally in a solid color, which I feel like there's a slight disconnect as a result to the background. So just one, I would either boost the saturation of the background a bit more, or just trying to level out and keep the saturation, the warmth of the piece consistent. So yeah, I probably my go-to would say, so you have less work to do, desaturate the tongue, the collar, and the gold part, and see about pulling in some of that texture here. Also, just one other thing, I would maybe re-angle the dog, have him coming up from the ground towards the butterfly, which you can make higher. Because right now he looks like he's leaping down and his eye focus is not quite on the butterfly. It would almost need to be up here, the eyeball, in terms of keeping that line of action and focal point to that butterfly. And my last note would just be scaling of the overall piece. If there's not going to be anything else here, unless there's a big chunk of text, I would say crop it a bit more so that you're more engaged on the action with the dog and the butterfly.
That's a great point, and one's not always thought of. As artists, we get to crop our own pieces, don't we, Nick? Until the art director says otherwise. But
exactly.
Up until that point, we can make them horizontals, verticals.
It's all adjustable. Until you submit it to your art director, it's your baby. So play with it
until that point. Yeah.
Take your time, enjoy it.
Enjoy it while you can.
Yeah, but a fun piece, and
you could put a little mat or viewfinder over the piece and see how you might crop it before you submit it to greatest impact. Yeah, like a watercolor painter would.
Yeah,
Sandy's piece.
Similar to the other one, I would say. Right now, the overall layout feels a little centered and kind of split with the carrot, where I'm a little conflicted going, would the text go here, would the text go there? Given its simpler nature, I would say, keeping the rabbit left justified, so, cropping off this part of the page, or just reworking the layout a little bit, but I think, because this is, we don't care as much about here unless this bird has some significance, but, it's nice to have the left side of your page have the weight and you can flow to the right. So immediately I would think if that were the case, if you cropped it here and started it with the rabbit, yanking at that carrot, you would have then your text here, which would be beautifully framed with the carrots the way they are.
Yeah.
Okay, another alternative. I would actually flip the entire orientation of this image so that you've got little carrot, big carrot, and what the rabbit is doing. I think it that way it would give you more of a build-up, a funnier, comical, lead up for
your punchline.
Exactly, yeah.
Funny. That's.
And I would maybe consider repositioning him too, because right now he doesn't seem like he's doing so well sitting down. I would almost have him kind of squatting and really yanking at that.
Working it, yeah.
Just pushing a bit more. The face is great with the tongue sticking out, going, we know he's struggling. But maybe have him just kind of squatting and really pushing, using his whole back. Take that pose yourself as the illustrator and put yourself in his shoes and just really yank it. And then what I often do sometimes when no one's around upstairs here, the Apple, what do you call it? The little video capture thing, photo booth. And I'll just take a quick video of myself trying to emulate the action that I'm trying to get in that one illustration.
Yes, every illustrator needs to do that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's a great tool. You got to become one with your characters. So take advantage of it and just close the doors behind you so no one judges you.
Just pretend you're Bugs Bunny and just put the action in it.
Yeah, method acting, right?
A little method acting is good for all of us. I don't think anybody would look askance at that for an illustrator. They'd
Yeah,
understand.
very interesting piece. This is the overall color palette is really engaging. I feel like I'm in New Mexico or a very very desert-like environment. Really
Mm,
very pretty. Um, just a nice overall composition here. Nice flow of having a nice solid big foreground element on the right here, a nice middle ground, and a nice background, and which is nicely muted down. There's a nice flow of background to middle ground to foreground. Um, yeah, I'd be very curious if the whole kind of story or narrative, or if maybe it's like a folk tale, New Mexico folk tale or Native American. I'm not quite sure, but it's very engaging and it's got
mhm.
some interesting patterning going on here. Um, Overall, too, I love the kind of gesso texture going on underneath. Very, very. It's got a very traditional feel to it, but I think digitally this would read really well, even with that implied texture going on, or like that overglaze look and feel.
I
I mean,
agree. Very fine art like, and yet
yeah.
very child's book illustrative. Like Tanya
Yeah.
says, it's the Australian outback. I
Oh,
believe it.
very.
I
And
completely.
it feels like the Fox and the Crow, that Aesop fable, almost like an implied version of that.
Yeah, it does have that fable quality, except these are indigenous animals, I guess,
Yeah,
to the
which
setting.
it would be so great.
Yeah,
I am even noticing too this kind of desert ground cracked look effect here,
yeah,
an age
yeah,
feel to it, which I think too will add to the nature of that story, especially if it's an old
yeah.
story. Like adding an element like that, a subtle one that's not distracting, done great, like how it is here, will just add so much more. Beautiful work.
Absolutely.
I think a great spot for text right here too. One nitpicky note I'll just say is this one little circular part which is framing this beautiful textured shape here. This one here feels a little off balance between these two, and it's getting a little blocked out by the leaves here. I like the leaves, and I think they need to be there, but I would just maybe bump this little circular part down to right about here. It will still have some overlap with the tree leaves, but I think it will stand out and feel more balanced here, because right now it's so blocked it almost feels like one went missing. Um,
Okay.
Bumping
Okay.
that down a hair. That's really it, though. I mean, this is published ready here, or publishing friendly, ready to go. Beautiful work.
Okay. Tanya, you've heard it from an art director, and she says it's a story about a nocturnal bilby.
Very cute.
Mm.
I'm sorry, I kind of lost my footing. There we go. So this is
Aboriginal.
the.
Oh, she says the decal was Aboriginal symbolism. Oh yeah, beautifully integrated. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be my only note. I mean, it's perfect. Beautiful work.
Now I think the next several are Tanya's. So do you want to just show them to us, and then maybe just
Sure. Well, I think Tanya, like she proved in the other one, has a great sense of texture that she adds in.
mm,
Um, Beautiful work here, and nice composition, nice flow, nice kid-friendly use of color.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
my only note would just be these feet here. I would almost dial back a little bit of the highlighting on the feet, this foot in particular, and just kind of smoothing it out a little bit more. They almost kind of, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. They've got almost a kind of Hobbit foot look to them, a little too mature looking.
mm,
Um, Very nitpicky note. I apologize, but I think just a little, because they're almost a little washed out there. Just kind of, you know, don't define that gap between foot and toes as much. It's a little detail that I think
little.
you can bypass. Don't get too lost in. But very cute piece. Oh, this is fun. Oh God, look at these characters. I would not want to go to school with them.
The
My
heathers.
immediate,
Yeah.
oh yeah, my immediate reaction to this was it reminded me very much of the chapter artwork you'd see in the Harry Potter books with the illustrations by Mary. I think it's Grand Prix or Grand Pre. I could never pronounce her name right. Very nicely done. A very unique style. Um, but yeah, it's got a really nice like young teen chapter artwork quality to it. Okay, well we chose a few more than one, but
That's because Nick is being so nice to us and working so hard for us.
well, I'm loving this, you guys. This is great.
And this is Virginia's piece.
Oh, and I think she had a note too, right? Yeah. Or no? Is this?
That's Yalitza who's coming up.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I don't think Virginia has a note. But this is watercolor of
Okay.
grandchildren. If I remember right,
Uh,
we've seen it in previous a previous critique.
Very cute. Watercolor is such a tricky medium, and I applaud you for, going at real human characters with it. It is tricky stuff because every little brush you make, it's done. It's there. It's not going anywhere. I think you did a good job of really keeping the proportions down really nicely. My only suggestion would be just capturing the silhouette shapes of their bodies where you get a little more readability out of it. Right here, the arm is foreshortened where the hand overlaps it. And I'd almost benefit from just having a little bit of elbow right here, just to show that she's kind of leaning in. I'm assuming she's at a chair or they're on the floor. That and the blue of this dress, I know your granddaughter probably wore this dress at the time, but overall this has a real, I'm assuming, Christmassy feel to it. You've got really nice dark wintry colors going on here. And then you've got this very light blue, cute sailor dress, but it almost feels a little detached in terms of the use of color here, which, in itself might work for a story where maybe this little girl is, with her pencil redrawing up her childhood memories that stood out the most to her. And maybe she's in this dress in every page. So if that's the case, if that's your context of turning this into a story, it works that way. As a single illustration, though, there is a little detachment going on, though, with the use of color. At the same time, they do frame her nicely because it's similar colors. But those would be my only notes. But very, very nicely done. It's impressionistic in a way. I like that it's not overtly, spot-on realistic with every little hairline detail. I think that's one of the joys of working in watercolor. You start out so broad with what you're doing, and it's layered. And I think there's something really nice to, the I wouldn't say unfinished, because this is finished in the way it is, but a not overly labored piece of watercolor work.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It's got an energy to it.
Freshness and energy to it.
Yeah.
And there's a dynamism to the kids. You do feel like the kids are really interacting in the scene with each other.
Yeah, she feels like she's the one in control. He's kind of captive audience, and she's, again, who knows, maybe, the one in the background taking it all in, or she's going to color on her. Who knows?
She thinks she's the center of attention.
Yeah, literally in the center of the composition, maybe.
Right. She's the precious one. Okay, now Yalitza's are the next two.
Very cute. I mean, I think these pieces right here, I mean, overall, I got her note there. I guess she said they told her color palette wasn't, what do they say, sophisticated. And I think that might be the issue of, there's some pops here of very saturated watercolor that I think, right now that this pink feels a little on the purpley side to really tie in with the more red-orange kind of quality you've got going on throughout. I think if that were maybe a little more red, a little less purpley pink, it would probably visually pop a little, or not pop, but it would, flow a little bit better. There's great action though going on. I really like this.
Nick, do you think if she were to break some of those colors by mixing in a little of the contrast, the opposite color on the wheel or something, just to sort of have some areas bright, but a lot of areas a little more neutralized, maybe, because there's
I think your main character elements are your opportunities to really have your moments of saturation with the use of color. Your pops of color.
Yeah.
Like if she was just in red, I almost think this blue is a little too aqua colored, and I think if you really pulled more from these more blue blues instead of green blues, it would probably allow that red to pop. Usually with children books and the use of visuals with children, there's always that pop of color associated with them and with the memory of whatever the page is evoking. So right now I feel a little torn between the pink that you see here and the red of her shirt. And pink and red together, you think Valentine's Day, but they're almost so similar where your eye just kind of gets a little confused. So I would say, dialing back on that here, either making it more reddish, maybe even more brownish, to allow that red to stand out. But her animals are really, really cute. And there's some nice indication of anatomy on the horse and the little calf here, without being too overtly, you know, overly anatomical, where you have a clash of realism versus, you know, stylistic interpretation. Now this piece works better, I think, because you don't have that pop of pink, and everything is more warmer. So you've got the nice warm reddish colors going on with the horse. Again, a very nice gesture too with the horse draw. The horse really flows straight into the I'm assuming father or male character here with the little, I'm assuming girl. If I'm wrong, I apologize. You've got a nice left to right flow again, and it's circular. I think I'm going back here to now like studying art history. When you look at the old religious frescoes, there's always a circular flow that you'll get from, you know, the left to the right. You start here with the tail of the horse, goes up through the head, down to the father character. I'm just calling him a father. Down to the tail, down to the foot. The foot takes you right back to the tail.
It gives us a triangle of sorts, a solid, lovely triangle. How about that?
Yeah. Again, it's something you'd see very commonly used with old, you know, Renaissance work, and it's always a foot too. It's funny. You look at like a Madonna and child painting. There's a foot. Either it's on, you know, the baby Jesus, or it's John the Baptist or something. It's always a foot that takes you right back up, or a look of the head. Nice sense of focal point here, and nice use of background elements, allowing these foreground characters to stand out. Their silhouettes are very readable.
I'm struck by the real nice fresh stage set. This she has really set a scene for us and put us there.
Maybe here, right here. I'd crop off this left portion. Yeah.
Oh, you're saying crop it all up to the horse?
I would crop it there. I mean, you have a little room between the tail and the edge of the illustration, but I always think you have opportunities to. I think it's okay if it's a centered, balanced image. It feels a little unfinished here, and I think staging-wise, you don't need that much space here, because it feels a little weighted on the right-hand side. So I think, you know, maybe mimicking the distance between the character's head and the edge of the page here onto this side where the horse's rear is, maybe right about there, cropping, and I think it would have a nice, you know, more focused quality to it. And maybe even put your text here. This is a great spot for it.
Just over his top of his shoulder there in that foliage and the trees? Yeah.
It might involve, like in Photoshop, a slight wash over it just to kind of blend it a little bit so it doesn't distract from your text. That's something we do a lot with our books. You know, we'll get illustrators that do very textured work that will oftentimes just need to kind of smooth out just a little so the text is able to have its clarity and stand out there. But overall, a very nice piece.
This has been like a whole class in composition. This has been wonderful. Thank you for this.
My big thing is staging usually, and I mean, I think that goes back to, you know, focusing so much of my studies on doing storyboarding and, you know, silhouettes with animation, making sure your poses are really readable. That's kind of a big thing, especially when you're working with digital media and on varying screen sizes. Clarity is key. So, you know, if you can't understand exactly what's going on, then your reader won't. So,
and exponential that for a child, you know, who's just getting used to the medium of books and reading.
And even when you have, you know, jobs in the illustration world, there's always something to improve. Even if your managers or directors don't think so, you yourself, the artist, are always going to be the hardest on yourself.
Diane's asking, is us time open for submissions? And if so, what's needed? Dinos? Or and then Pascal also asked, is us time currently looking for illustrators, and how can they get in touch with you if so?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we have a lot of different content coming down the pipeline that we're still developing. Some's ready to go. I mean, it ranges from toddler content, where we've got, you know, characters like dinosaurs and you know, human characters, kids and whatnot. So we're really open right now to just seeing, you know, just work in general from illustrators. Like I said, sometimes an individual piece from your portfolio will get us thinking about the story that we're assigning in a different way. Like I mentioned with Lori, she didn't have necessarily anything in her portfolio that had that same black silhouette character style, but she had work in there that showed us that she was able to do something like that. So when we offered her that job, we threw that challenge out and said, this is kind of what we're thinking. We think based off of your current work, you'd be able to possibly do that. And so we tested it out and it worked out in the end. So it's a journey. Every project's a journey that we, hope that the illustrator gets a great experience out of, has fun with, and feels creatively challenged and inspired to work on. So we're open to totally just a variety of styles. Again, we do prefer digital just because, again, the nature of the process and how there are changes involved and how we don't want the illustrators to have to go in, if they're doing traditional mediums like watercolor, to have to go in and completely repaint something. We want to avoid that by all costs, because that's just labor we don't want them to have to go into. So, knowledge of Photoshop is really important. We'd be open to someone working out of Adobe Illustrator too. But yet digital is a big part, though, just again because
you're in the digital marketplace with your product.
Well, that's the thing. When you're working and authoring and creating books for a digital medium, it really does help to work in that zone, because you're illustrating with a screen in mind, with a backlit screen. It's a whole different baby than when you're illustrating for the traditional book world, where you're dealing with paper. So, for instance, with digital, you may not want to do a lot of work where you've got a lot of white space. Like you saw in Hansel and Gretel, we had moments where it looked like it was white space with just text, vignettes like that, or that text. It's actually a kind of almond white. I kind of tinted a little. It's kind of a little digital cheat.
And why is that, Nick? Why not?
Because it's a great question. It's because when you're working or reading a book on a digital screen, a lot of people, don't want it's bright by nature because you've got backlighting. So if you've got white on there, it's going to really stand out, and it's going to ultimately kind of detract from your illustration content, of your book. So it's a balancing act, but those are some fun little cheats to do, to kind of, still get that look and feel, but have it work in a digital environment better.
Great. You've recommended a website to go to get some really great Photoshop brushes that can simulate gouache and watercolor. So I will put that up in the video and on the page tonight and in the follow-up email. And thank you for that resource. And would you like to see postcards? No, you just said digital submission. So can they send a link to their website, or how do you want to hear from them?
We're open to, either sending a link to a portfolio website, or, I know people have Blogspot, Tumblr, or even if you have a PDF of your work with, I'd say, at least 10 pieces. I know some, every art industry professional has, different preferences of what they like to see in a portfolio. A lot of people don't want to see more than 10 pieces, or like 5 or 6. But I think that's usually like the big wig places where, they have so many people coming in and they just don't have the time to look. I personally like to look at all of the work that illustrator has. I would say maybe cap it around 15 pieces of your best work. Show maybe work in different styles and mediums, different looks that you can do if you do more mature looking work, if you do toddler style stuff. We like to see a diversity of work there, because again, one piece may, trigger us thinking about you for something else. So.
And as not as attachments to an email, but like maybe on a website, a blog page, or where do you want to see these 15 pieces on an online portfolio?
You can send it even as an attachment in an email to me directly at nick@ustime.com.
That's pretty easy.
Yeah, it can just be a PDF attached in an email. That would be just fine. Or if you have a link to your portfolio website, that's great too. So.
Okay.
Don't attach each individual image in the email, just because sometimes that opens the door for email errors and stuff. And
put it in one PDF.
Yeah, a PDF is always good.
That just makes perfect sense. What a nice way to be able to submit your portfolio. Can Nick explain the submission process? I guess, Pascal, you're talking about the actual submitting of the pieces and the final art. Nick, do you want to address that? And then we don't
You
want
mean
to.
in terms of in an S-Time project, how that goes?
Right.
So in terms of the S-Time projects, everything's done and submitted via Dropbox. So if you're working with your Photoshop files for each page, you've painted them all, they're done, they're ready to go. You just drop them off into your Dropbox folder that I have access to. I then get the work, I present it to my coworkers in the content team. We look it over, discuss any changes we want you to make, or we'll give you the final, thumbs up, it's great, move on to whatever the next phase is. So it's all strictly through Dropbox, which is really, really clean. I mean, I hadn't really used it till I started with S-Time, but it's really a really great, reliable source for dropping stuff off. I think more so than the Google Drive. You have much more flexibility with Dropbox.
Okay. PSD files in Dropbox, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Nick, thank you so much. This has been awesome. I'm going to stop the broadcast. So we'll end the broadcast here, and the replay will be up momentarily, and we'll put the links out. And again, thank you for just a wonderful session. God, I feel like I've been to art school tonight. The whole thing in one night.
Thank you. This has been really wonderful, and we really appreciate. I speak for myself and everyone at S-Time. We really appreciate the work you do and the artists you inspire, who we've had the pleasure of working with. And I appreciate you giving me audience tonight to talk about S-Time and who we are. And I thank your students too for sharing their work and allowing me to critique it. I really enjoyed it, and keep up the great work, everyone, and best of luck to you, and keep drawing.
Keep drawing. Tanya says thank you. This was wonderful. So with that comment from Tanya, we'll stop the broadcast, and good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.